I stepped outside for coffee and found a full wedding. In my backyard, chairs, cupcakes, Karen, screaming at vendors like she owned the place. And that's when I knew this ceremony was about to get very wet. Karen threw a wedding by my pool, so I turned on the wave machine mid-vows. Part 1. The Cupcake Vendor and the Shock. The morning sun had barely stretched over the rooftops when I stepped out onto my patio, coffee steaming in hand, ready to enjoy a rare, peaceful moment of suburban stillness. But peace wasn't on the agenda, because right there, at the far end of my pool, stood a massive, plastic, white wedding arch, covered in cheap roses. Dozens of white folding chairs lined my backyard like a budget chapel, rows and rows of them, on my grass, my lawn, my Saturday. Then, a man carrying a giant box of cupcakes strolled up, looked me straight in the face, and asked, "You, the groom?" I blinked. "What?" He shrugged, kept walking, and started setting up a dessert table right by my pool deck, like this was a wedding venue, like he belonged here. I stood there, frozen, trying to convince myself I'd accidentally walked into someone else's backyard, except I hadn't. This was my home, my patio, my pool, my life, and someone was throwing a wedding in the middle of it. That someone? She strutted down my paved walkway a moment later. Wedge heels, floppy sun hat, clipboard in hand, and that unmistakable aura of smugness that could only mean one thing: Karen, my neighbor, my nemesis, and the self-declared queen of our HOA. She didn't flinch when she saw me, didn't apologize, didn't even slow down. "Oh, good morning," she chirped, as if I were her guest. "I assumed you were already informed about today." I just stared, unable to compute what was happening. She actually laughed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's just a small wedding ceremony," she said. "My niece Emily, she really loved the aesthetic of your pool." Then she waved her hand like she was blessing me with good news. "Don't worry, we'll be done by sundown. And obviously, you're invited." I felt my pulse spike. "This is private property," I said flatly. "You can't just—" "Oh, don't be dramatic," Karen snapped, with the kind of tone that made you want to launch her clipboard into orbit. According to the HOA Visual Harmony Clause, yes, she actually said that. Any neighborhood-adjacent amenity can be used for decorative continuity. Since your pool is visible from the road, it qualifies as a community-viewed asset. That was fiction. Absolute fiction. I knew the bylaws. I'd memorized them after Karen tried to fine me last year for wind chimes. I had never given permission for this, and the rage in my chest was just getting started. Part 2. The Clipboard Queen and the Cord Request. Karen didn't even blink when I told her she was trespassing. She just smiled, tapped her headset like she was directing a film shoot, and spun around, muttering something about a missing flower arrangement. I followed her, barely 2 steps behind, but before I could say anything, a girl in a satin robe stepped in front of me. "Hi. Do you happen to have any extension cords we could borrow?" She tilted her head like I was the neighborhood handyman. I stared, speechless, still hoping this was some kind of fever dream. But no, it was real. I stormed back inside, dialed the HOA board. No answer. I tried again, and again. Finally, on the 4th call, Mark, the HOA secretary, picked up. He sounded like I'd woken him from a nap inside a coffin. Hey, what's up?" "What's up?" I snapped. Karen hijacked my backyard and is hosting a wedding by my pool. Long pause. Then, oh, that. Yeah, she mentioned something about an event. Said she had your blessing. She lied. She showed us a diagram of your yard and said it was a mutual agreement. You guess? I was nearly yelling now. She's got a DJ setting up on my pool deck and someone is using my fence to string fairy lights. Mark muttered something about bringing it up at the next board meeting. I hung up, because it was clear no help was coming. And when I stepped back outside, I saw the next level of absurdity had already begun. A DJ was now rolling in speaker towers. A stack of throw pillows, my pillows, had been redecorated into wedding aisle markers. And then, there she was again, Karen, headset on, shouting at a caterer. If I don't see the Rosado tray by 5 p.m., I swear I'll report your Yelp listing myself. She spotted me mid-rant and gave me a casual thumbs up. Thanks again, she called. You really saved the day. I stared at her. I'm not saving anything, you're trespassing. She sighed, like I was the one ruining her party. If you want to talk legal, she said, you might want to recheck your property lines. That back fence? Technically a few inches encroach on community land. She pointed like a general declaring war. So maybe let's not start measuring. I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because this woman had just tried to threaten me with imaginary inches of fence line encroachment while hosting a wedding. In my yard. My fists clenched, my brain boiled, and that was when I started planning. Part 3. Operation Splashdown begins. I turned to head back inside when I heard it. Music. A Bluetooth speaker somewhere near the diving board, playing what sounded like a piano version of 1,000 Years. I froze and looked back just in time to see a woman in a clearly fake wedding gown stand beside a cardboard cutout of a man. Someone called action, and she began practicing her vows on my pool deck, in front of my hydrangeas. Karen, she stood behind the camera like a director at a film shoot, clipboard in one hand, headset in the other, instructing the groom to shift slightly left. So the pool sparkles in the background, she said. My pool, on my electricity, on my Saturday. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was anxious, but because I was planning. Because what Karen didn't know, what no one in the neighborhood knew, was that 3 years ago, I had installed something beneath my pool deck, a wave generator. Originally, it was for a water therapy program I helped run. Small controlled waves to help with joint mobility and rehab. But I'd left it dormant, unplugged, until now. That night, under the cover of moonlight, I crept out onto the pool deck, pulled back a camouflage mat near the side hatch, and reconnected the control unit. The generator hummed softly, still alive, still powerful. 3-foot waves in a residential pool. I ran a quick test. Just a soft churn, barely enough to ripple the surface. But it worked. It was ready. Tomorrow. While Karen's niece walked the aisle in her back alley bridal dress, while Karen played queen of the clipboard, while guests sipped rosé and balanced cupcakes on my garden wall, I'd be ready too. Not with a lawsuit, not with a confrontation, but with waves, literal, metaphorical, and unforgettable. Because if they wanted a dramatic backdrop, I was going to give them one. Part 4. The violinist, the vows, and the voltage. By the time the sun peeked through the clouds the next morning, my backyard no longer looked like mine. It looked like the set of a reality show, one of those chaotic wedding specials where everything goes wrong. Except this time. I was the one holding the script. White tents flapped in the breeze, pink satin ribbons dangled from my patio lights. There was a DJ tuning his soundboard on the diving board, and pastel-drenched guests fluttered across my lawn like confused flamingos at a garden party. Karen stood by the altar, headset on, clipboard thick, Bluetooth speaker clipped to her hip, snapping orders like a drill sergeant fueled by espresso and audacity. "Move the flower petals 3 inches to the left," she barked at the florist, "and get those champagne glasses wiped down. They're sweating in the sun." I watched everything from behind my sliding glass door. Silent. Still. Not out of fear, but in pure anticipation. The wave machine waited beneath the water, dormant, dead quiet, like a sea beast coiled under the surface. I had memorized every dial, measured splash radius, checked the depth, current flow, chair placements. All I needed was the right moment. And then it came. At 2:12 p.m. on the dot, a white limousine rolled into my driveway. Karen clapped like she'd summoned royalty from the sky. Out stepped the bride, young, nervous, wearing a lace-covered dress with a 20-foot train and heels that looked like they were fighting gravity. She paused, took a shaky breath, and Karen immediately shoved the photographer. "No shots with the beige siding," she snapped. "It ruins the aesthetic. Keep the camera angled toward the pool." My eye twitched. The bride disappeared into a pop-up bridal tent Karen had erected over what used to be my vegetable patch. Karen followed behind her, dragging a rolling emergency makeup kit and leaving wet footprints all across my tile. And just like that, any sympathy I might have felt? Gone. That's when the neighbors started arriving. Not to celebrate, but to witness. Greg stood near his mailbox, binoculars in hand, nodding at me like a football coach ready to send in the MVP. Dana pretended to water her front lawn while secretly recording on her phone. Everyone knew. Everyone was watching. At exactly 3 p.m., the violinist started playing. The guests stood, cameras flashed, the altar sparkled with silk drapes and a plastic rose trellis. Karen strutted between the rows, adjusting corsages, fixing programs, and smiling like a pageant mom ready to win. Then she took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice sticky sweet with smugness. "Thank you all for being part of this magical day, and a special thank you to our wonderful neighbor whose scenic pool provided the perfect backdrop for Emily and Brad's eternal vows." My eye twitched again, but I didn't punch the glass door. I just reached under the utility cabinet, lifted a towel, and placed my thumb on the wave machine dial. The music shifted. The bride emerged, holding her father's arm, carefully walking down the makeshift aisle between the lawn chairs. Karen gave a sharp nod to the DJ. He lowered the volume. The officiant stepped forward. "We are gathered here today." Click. I twisted the dial and smiled. Part 5. The splash, the scream, and the spinach dip. It started slow. Just a soft, almost innocent rumble beneath the surface. The water shifted, barely noticeable. A ripple here, a shimmer there. Guests murmured. Fans fluttered. One woman leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Did you feel that?" Karen turned, eyes narrowing. I waited, then cranked the dial. Wave 1 rolled in like a polite warning, a subtle splash that kissed the heels of the front row. Gasps, shuffling, a few chuckles. Karen's face tightened, and I cranked again. Wave 2 wasn't polite. It hit. Chairs tipped backward, napkins launched into the air like startled birds. A centerpiece floated into the aisle. The bride stumbled, still holding her bouquet, as the music abruptly cut off. From my hiding spot, I heard the unmistakable scream of a flower girl diving under a buffet table. Karen spun toward the pool, headset swinging wildly, screaming, "What the hell?" Too late. Wave 3 was glorious. It roared forward like a suburban tsunami, lifted from the deep end, crashing into the altar with majestic fury. The silk trellis cracked, tilted, then slammed down onto the groom's shoulder with a wet whomp. The bride's veil flew off, cartwheeled into the pool, and landed like a ghost escaping the ceremony. The cake table? Obliterated. A chocolate tear slid into the punch bowl. Cupcakes became floating casualties. Lobster thermidor launched off a tray like cannon fire. The DJ, panicking, tried to shield his gear, slipped, and fell face first into a cooler of shrimp cocktail. And Karen? Oh. Karen took a direct hit. A full tidal push sent her clipboard flying, heels skidding, and she landed face first into a massive platter of spinach dip. For a moment, no one moved. Just water dripping. Chairs floating, guests frozen in soaked disbelief. Then chaos erupted, shrieks, splashing, people grabbing napkins like life vests. An elderly man tried using the pool ladder as a walker, got pulled halfway into the shallow end. One woman yelled something about her purse being vegan leather. Someone's wig floated past the barbecue grill. My neighbors across the street collapsed in laughter. Greg dropped his binoculars from shaking so hard. Dana was doubled over in the hydrangeas. Even the violinist gave up and started live streaming. I stepped outside, still dry, still calm, phone recording in hand. Karen dragged herself out of the wave, covered in dip, makeup streaked like melting paint. She grabbed the mic, now squealing from water damage, and screeched, "This is an act of war!" I raised an eyebrow. "You're trespassing," I said, "and I have hours of footage. You hijacked my property." She pointed at me, soaked, trembling, furious. "You won't get away with this." "Oh," I smiled. I already did. Part 6, the courtroom, the flash drive, and the fall of Karen. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was quiet, small, plain, tense. I didn't wear a suit, just a black polo, clean, calm. Because I wasn't here to impress anyone, I came to win. Karen strutted in like she was starring in a courtroom drama. White pantsuit, pearl earrings, a manila folder bursting at the seams with soggy photos and blurry printouts. Her lawyer looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She took her seat, back straight, lips pursed, and shot me a glare that could melt granite. The judge called us forward. Karen's lawyer stood first, cleared his throat, and launched into what sounded like a rejected soap opera script. "Your Honor, what occurred was a malicious, calculated act of aquatic sabotage." He said those words. Aquatic sabotage. Karen clutched her folder dramatically and added, "He used a wave machine as a weapon. My family was traumatized. The cake was ruined. My daughter's veil flew into the pool like a spirit." The judge blinked, scribbled something on a legal pad. Then it was my turn. I stood, pulled out a flash drive, plugged it into the courtroom monitor, and hit play. Footage rolled. Karen, strutting through my yard like she owned it, directing caterers, snapping at the DJ, telling the florist to ignore the homeowner. Then came the drone clip. Her bragging, "He won't sue. He's too spineless." There were chuckles from the gallery. Someone coughed the word karma. I handed over emails from the HOA, including the one where Mark admitted she never got written permission. I showed screenshots of the group thread, where she claimed I happily offered my yard. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Did the homeowner give consent for this event?" Karen blurted, "It was implied." The courtroom went silent. The judge stared for one long, heavy moment, then said, "Case dismissed." Bang. My countersuit for trespassing and property damage approved for small claims court. Karen's face went from crimson to chalk in seconds. Her lawyer leaned in, whispered something. She looked like she was about to explode into glitter and flames. Outside the courthouse, she tried one last time. "You don't get it," she hissed. "You humiliated me. That was my daughter's big day." I shrugged. "Next time, try asking first." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. No comeback, no threat, just silence. She turned, heels clicking like a broken clock, and walked away. By the end of the month, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn, and soon after, a big red sticker, "Sold." Karen was gone. No farewell speech, no clipboard, just a moving truck, and the sweet sound of an HOA-wide exhale. Part 7. The Interview, the Internet, and the HOA Chronicles. I thought it was over. I really did. Karen was gone. The for sale sign replaced with a moving truck. The HOA meetings were finally quiet. No yelling. No demands. No pastel clipboards slamming on tables. I figured that was it. A ridiculous saga, with a wet ending. But one morning, a white van pulled up outside my house, satellite dish on top, camera crew inside. A reporter knocked, smiling like she already knew the answer. "Are you the guy from the, wedding wave story?" I blinked. "Yes?" Turns out, Greg, my neighbor with the drone, had uploaded the footage. And it went viral. Not just viral, nuclear. Millions of views, reaction videos, TikTok duets with the moment Karen slipped into the spinach dip timed to a bass drop. There was even a remix. The veil flying into the pool synced to Celine Dion. I laughed so hard I cried. They asked for an interview. I gave one, then another. Before long, I had a YouTube channel, the HOA Chronicles, where I started sharing stories, real ones, from my neighborhood. Petty revenge, absurd rules, clashes over mailbox height, flamingo decor, even a dispute about someone's grass being too emotionally aggressive. Episode 1, you guessed it, the wave machine wedding, 1.2 million views in just 2 weeks. But fame wasn't the best part. The best part came at the next HOA meeting. Part 8, the vote, the barbecue, and the letter from the bride with Karen gone. Something amazing happened. The HOA board started acting like actual adults. They passed new rules, real ones this time. Clear language about event permissions, property boundaries, and a total ban on unsanctioned gatherings without notarized homeowner consent. Dana was elected chair of the events committee. Greg became head of neighborhood mediation. They asked me to join as an advisor. I politely declined. "My pool's done enough talking," I said with a grin. Instead, I threw my own backyard event. Nothing fancy. Just burgers, lemonade, a bounce house for the kids, no DJs, no champagne towers, no clipboards in sight. As the sun began to set, I stood by the grill and raised a soda can. 3 weeks ago, I said, this yard was hijacked by insanity. Today, it's just a backyard again. But let's remember something. Respect your neighbors. Ask before you assume. And most importantly, never mess with a guy who owns a remote-controlled wave machine. Laughter, clinking cans. Even the toddlers in the bounce house cheered. That night, as I cleaned up plates and turned off the garden lights, I found an envelope taped to my front door, handwritten, no return address. I opened it cautiously, half expecting glitter or a lawsuit. But inside was a simple note. From Emily, the bride. Dear neighbor, thank you for stopping the wedding. I didn't want it either. You saved me from a mistake. and gave me a story I'll never forget. Sincerely, Emily. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled and stuck it on my fridge. Because in a neighborhood full of entitled neighbors, crazy HOA rules, and weaponized garden parties, sometimes the messiest moments lead to the cleanest outcomes. And sometimes the best revenge is a wave.